Thanks for joining us again for another office hours where we're going to focus on today a new release that we're excited about for Exact Forms Plus. We have some new functionality. We had some issues with dates, so we worked on that for this release as well. So I just wanted to kind of hit that first before I go into summary reports, because summary reports is the big feature set that we've added to Exact Forms Plus for this release, but we threw in some other changes as well, and dates was another challenge that we had. So if you see my screen here, I have a project manager app that I set the app itself to be in a different time zone. Before I installed anything, I went to this, I pulled the app out of the library and I set the time zone to be, I think it's Brussels time zone. And I also set the date format to be day, month, year, instead of the typical US format, which is month, day, year, obviously. Month, day, year. So day, month, year is a popular one for obviously a lot of international customers. And we're having some challenges with that, and Exact Forms Plus never really fully supported that. And we found some other issues with the Quickbase API when we're updating date times from Exact Forms Plus. So I wanted to show you what we did to fix that. Just so you know, every time an app is created brand new, Quickbase defaults Pacific time. So if you're not in the Pacific time, you should change it right away to match your time. So what we did is we store the app time zone and the date format in our own system for each application that is set up to use one of our add-ons. So if you don't change that date time prior to us setting up an add-on, we're going to have the old time zone. So another thing we took care of is we're going to run a process now that once a month we'll go and refresh, meaning it'll go read the application itself and find out what the time zone is, what the name is, and what the date format is, and it'll store that back in our database so that ongoing we won't have a problem with an out of sync between your app and how we store things in our master CRM. You can always reach out to us if you think there's an issue with your time zone or your date format, and we can update it properly. So so in this app, again, I have, as you can see, the dates and the times, well, actually the dates are in day, month, year. Obviously, you can see this one here being 23/7 and so on. So when I create a document now with Exact Forms Plus, because I set up Exact Forms Plus after I already stored the date and time and the formatting in our app, everything should be fine when the document's created. So I'm going to create a quick document, and you're going to see that now the estimated start time is August 21st. So we have the proper day, month, year. Actual start time is the same. And even in the subtables now, we hold through with that. So you don't have to do anything, you don't have to create any special formula text fields to convert dates. We're going to pick up the application's time zone, and we'll treat the dates based on that application's time zone and date formatting. So as you can see here, even the date time is different because I just created this before. So we should be able to handle dates now. Any questions on that? One other thing I want to show you quickly is if for some reason you wanted to, in the subtable, show a different date time, we give you that ability now. So this is our new configurator. This is going to support summary reports as well. But I'm going to just come over quickly to the subtable fields. And if you see a date field, you'll now see a date format. If it's blank, we will default to the application's date format. We have 7 different time zones. Date formats, similar to how Quickbase works. So if you happen to just want to, for some reason, just change the date that appears in a subtable and not change the underlying application's date format or the field's date format, you can override it here, and it'll just display properly in the output subtable. So that's pretty much it on dates. One other thing that we did notice, which was kind of a little weird issue, when we save our date time back to Quickbase. So this is the EFP date field. So now it's formatted properly. And in live version right now, if you have DDMMYYYY, it will not format properly. Newer version will. But what we found is there was some issue with the API where it was only an issue for the first 12 days of the month. Day 13 through 30 or 31 or 28 always worked properly. So that's why it was kind of like a needle in the haystack, really, because sometimes when customers were reporting it, we didn't understand, because if we were testing it after the 12th, everything was working fine. But needless to say, we should have no problem with that now with this new release. So as far as dates are concerned, we think we got them handled now, and we should be able to handle all different types of date formats as well as time zones. Any questions on dates? Good.
Looks
All right. So let's get into the main changes that we made for Exact Fonts Plus for this release, which really centers around summary reports. So I have an invoicing application. I think I showed this one in the prior office hours, but basically what I'm going to show here is, everyone's familiar here with Exact Fonts Plus. This is what a typical detail report might look like, or a detailed document will look like when it comes out of Exact Fonts Plus. So it's pretty much showing all of the line item data for a particular subtable. So in this case, if I have my item parts, you'll see that this kind of detail matches everything. If I scroll down further, you'll see that it just kind of takes this subtable that's in Quickbase and it kind of dumps it out here. And that's typically how all of Exact Fonts Plus works. But in the case where you didn't, let's say you had hundreds of line items and you don't want to show them all, but maybe you just want to show the groupings. So maybe instead of showing this, maybe you actually wanted to show something like this, which is really a summary of that. So here I just created another formula field, a formula URL field, and I pointed at a summary report that I created, which is QID 8. So basically for this invoice, it's basically summarizing those three groupings, as well as we have another part, a line items and a parts table. So the line items as well, same thing. I have some line items in detail, and then I have a summary version of that. Now, this is QID 8 and this is QID 13. So let's go to the parts table and quickly look at that QID 8, which is this guy right here. So this is the summary report. But if you notice, it's showing all of the invoices. So I'm not filtering it because I want to dynamically filter it. So when I'm on an invoice record, when I'm on invoice number 1, I only want to show the first 3 records because that's what belongs to invoice number 1. And when I'm on invoice 2, I want to show those, and so on. So this is what we consider a master summary report. And what that really means is I want to filter the data by the master record. I want to use a summary report in Exact Fonts Plus, but I want to filter the data in that summary report by the record I'm on, or the master record. And it kind of filters properly in Quickbase, but we need to kind of do that in Exact Fonts Plus as well. And the same thing with the line items. So we have the same situation where on the line items, so we basically have two subtables in this instance. But here's my other summary report by master. So it's showing me everyone right now, but obviously I want to filter it down by the invoice that I'm on. Now, when you create these summary reports for use in Exact Fonts Plus, when you want to filter by the master record, meaning in this case the invoice, you must have the related invoice, the way it connects back to the invoice table, in the first column. That's critical. So if you took this report and you just started with product, parts, quantity, and total units, it won't filter properly. So that's one thing you have to make sure that you do, is include the related or the reference field back to the master table in column 1. It won't show on the report because we will hide it, but that's the way that we know how to filter things properly when we're on an invoice. So if I go back to my invoices, I'm going to actually generate an Exact Fonts Plus document with that summary. So again, here we have I'm going to just edit this because I want to show both the summary and the detail. So I showed you the detail before, but I'm going to recreate it with the detail, and I'm also going to show the summary. So if I click this button, it's going to create that same detailed report that we saw before, but it's also now creating the summary for that detail. So if we look over, I'm just going to shrink this a little bit. So if we look over here, it kind of replicated that Quickbase report right here. So we have 8023.4 for 107, as well as for the total value of all of those units. And then I also have the line item list And then we also, if I scroll down here, you'll see a summary report with the same. So here's where we're actually taking the summary report, filtering it by the master record, which is the invoice record, just showing those 3 line items here. And again, there's another 3 line item up above. Really, they're summary items though. Now, that's, so let's say that you don't want to show detail at all. So in the case where you just want to show summary because maybe that makes more sense to you. So I created another template that would do that. So if I come in here, and that's why I have this little report type here. So if I just want to show the summary, I don't want to show the detail. So in that case, when I click this button and create the invoice, it's only going to show those 2 summary reports. So there they are. Again, it's the 2 summary reports that match the summary reports on the Quickbase record. The values match, as you can see. So again, I just want to make sure we're clear. The most critical piece of this is that the related invoice number, or the reference field that connects back to the master table, is in the report. But as you can see, it's not in the output in ExactForms Plus. We kind of remove it. But here's another benefit. So these reports, if you do a screen print right now, you can't control any of this stuff. So if you're using some reports and you're trying to do screen prints to PDF, you can't control what the summary line says. You can't control what the headers are. But the cool thing about what we can do now is you can use the ExactForms Plus configurator to handle all of the colorization, the formats, the widths, the titles of each column. If you want to add a label in the subtotal, again, the colorization, hiding borders, just like you do for a detail report, you can do the same thing for a summary report. And I'm going to actually get into Configurator and show you that. But I just kind of wanted to show you the output of what we're talking about here. So we have details, and now we have summaries. So again, I'm going to jump over to the Configurator because I want to show you how we did this. And in this report here, I do show, just for my own purposes, this was STRID 3, and this was STRID 23. So when I come over to my document templates in my subtables, let's take a look at what that subtable configuration looks like now. So if I go to number 3, the difference you're going to now see in our configuration utility is the subtable, the selection of the table is the same, but here's the big difference. You didn't see this in the past. It always defaulted to detail because detail is what we showed right away. But now you have 2 other options. Excuse me. You have master summary and basically a summary. I'm going to talk about master summary first, and that's kind of what we're dealing with when we're working with this one report I have right here. Again, this is a master summary because it's only being summarized for this particular master record. So here's when you have master summary, you'll see that there's a drop down. The drop down is going to show you all summary reports. Now this is report query ID number 8. But you're not going to see that. You're only going to see the name. So when you create a summary report, and it's for the parts table in this case, when you come over here and you choose master summary, when you hit the drop down, you'll see all of the summary reports that are for that parts table that are available for selection and use in ExactForms Plus. Now, we do not support crosstab queries. Crosstab queries and the way that the data is brought back to us via the API, through the new JSON API, it's very, very, let's say, hard to work with. So we still have it on our roadmap to someday support crosstab queries, but right now we won't even show them in this dropdown. So if you did have a crosstab query on your table, your parts table, you won't see it in this dropdown list. So again, that report that you saw on that invoices table for the parts, you'll see that this is the report. And after I choose it, down here, we will also let you add additional filtering criteria. So we typically filter by the reports filtering criteria. And when it's a master summary, we filter by the actual master record. But if you wanted to add additional filtering criteria that you don't want to add into the summary report, you can do that right here just by doing normal filtering criteria that you're used to with ExactForms Plus on the detail side. In this case, I didn't do that because all I wanted to do was show me all of the part line items in summary for the invoice record. So that's the only change you're going to see on this tab. Now we come over to the subtable fields. You'll notice that these are not editable anymore, meaning you can't remove any of these fields. You can't add any fields. Whatever fields are in the summary report are the fields that are going to be displayed in this list, and you can't change them. Okay, so if you really wanted to change them, you got to go back to the summary report and add or change fields. So you should get your summary report down pat, exactly the way you want it before you set up this configuration. The things you can change, though, you can change the field type, you can change the width, and in this case, the first column, we're not going to use it anyway, so you can leave it by default because we just ignore it anyway. You don't have to put it as null because we're just going to remove it. But we need it there again to connect back to the master record. So you can handle the widths, you can override the labels, because this is what the default fields are in the actual report. So again, if I go back to that report in the parts table, which was number 8. So again, here's query 8. If I bring the configurator over here, you'll see that the related invoice, line item, all of these are coming from the labels in Quickbase itself. But we won't show those in Exact Fonts Plus. Obviously, you saw that because we allow you to override them. Now you can also go to advanced settings, which I did here because I wanted to summarize these fields. So I went in here and I chose grand total summary, and I can change obviously everything else that you can do from a detail level. And I also summed up this field so that when we actually generate the invoice, you'll see that we get the summarization of those 2 columns. If you didn't summarize them here, they're not going to summarize in Exact Fonts Plus. So those are the things that you can do. And then you can have everything else too. You're not going to be able to sort and group because we're taking the sorting and grouping of the summary report itself. But you can handle grand total labels. We're going to hide this section because we really don't do subtotals in summary reports. But you can't click anything here anyway. But you can do grand total. So you can see I was able to change the color of the background and of the black font color. And I was able to put the label total in the line item column and justify that right. So you still have full capability, just like you do in the detail in your summaries. So now the next thing on the configurator is your subtable formatting. Again, you can handle the borders, you can handle displaying the column headers and not. So you get, again, full capability from a customization or a view in your document. Now, so that's our master to summary, filtering it by the master record. Now, there are cases where you might want to just display some summary reports. Maybe you're not on a master record. Maybe you want to go in and create a sales report, or maybe you want to see from all your companies, what are the sales by company? So what I did was I created a reporting table, and that's where I created strictly summary-based queries. So not master summary, summary. So let's go. I created a table here called reporting, just because it's not really connecting to anything, because I'm pulling summary reports from a bunch of tables. And I created a sample document template. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. Should open this before, but anyway. Okay, so here's my document template. And basically I'm showing a summary report from the company table, another summary report from the company table, a summary report from my invoices table, and a summary report from my line items table. So I'm grabbing summary reports from multiple tables. And I just have little notes here so I know which STRID it is when we generate this. But I created some subtable configurations. And what I did was, I'm going to show you. So I went to, this one is 27. So I basically had a document template that was already configured from my company's table. So I just created another subtable configuration. I'm not going to use it in one of these other templates. I'm just going to use it for this particular template. So I went in here and I created number 27, which is actually going to appear right there. And let's take a look at that one. So I come in here and edit it. We're going to see now, I chose the company's table, but also it's a summary because it's not connected to anything. It's just going to be a summary report. And again, I have a summary report called invoice summary. So let's take a look at what that report looks like. So if I go to my company's table, and I look at report number 7, which is this one, you'll see invoice, and again, that showed up in the dropdown. So the name of it was invoice summary. That's what will show in here. I only have one summary report on the company's table. So I chose that report, and again, it pre-populated all of the columns in that report. As you can see, company, industry, and number of invoices. So what I did was I said, I want to know all of the invoices for all my customers, and I want to know how many invoices for each customer. I want to know the total values. So that's what I did. I chose that report. It pre-populated the columns. So again, I can't hide any, I can't remove any, I can't add any. But what I can do is I can change the type, I can change the width, I can change the column label, I can say that which ones I want to summarize in grand total, and how I can justify them, etc. So that's one configuration. So I did the same thing for these other ones. I just created a new subtable configuration that points to a summary report that's just a generic summary report. So let's actually generate that and see what happens. I'm going to close this. So we're going to go to my reporting table. I'm going to click on generate the document. So now you see here, I have my customer summary report that we saw before. This one I actually filtered. So we were talking about filtering before. I actually went to this one on 28. So I had that same report that we saw by company, but I want to filter it. So I added a filter that said, only show me customers in the technology industry. So that's why you only see one record in there, because the two companies that showed up in the first one was in the retail industry and one was in the technology industry. So you see retail technology. So that's how I was able to, instead of filtering the actual report itself, I filtered it in Exact Ones Plus. So obviously I could have filtered that report ahead of time in the report itself. But in this case, I wanted to show you dynamic filtering so that if I have a summary report and I want to filter by something, I can. And then in this case, I went to the invoices table and I have a report that shows invoices by month, summary by month. So here's my summary by month report. I'm just going to pull my template back over. So my template shows it invoice by summary by month. It's STRID number 30. So we went to STRID number 30. We would see that it's pointed at the invoices table and is pointed at a QID. I think it's number 7. Number 30. I'm just going to pull up the configurator. It's a summary by month report from the invoices table. So that's why you see this report, because it matches the report that we have right here. So again, we got these few months that are summed up. Sorry, bouncing around here. But again, it's not tied to a specific company. It's not tied to a specific invoice. It's a summary report that tells me all of my invoices summed up by month, the number of invoices, and the value. And I did the same thing for my line items table. So I went to the line items table and I have another summary report, and I'm doing the same thing. And in this case, I didn't override in the configurator the column headers. So I wanted to show you what they look like, right? If you don't override them, it's going to look like just like you see them in the report, just like this one did too. So that is really the power of summary now is you have two flavors of summary. You can create a summary report that's connected to a specific master record, or you can display summary reports that are not connected to anything. They're just generic summary reports. So you can create yourself now a nice PDF pulling in summary data. Maybe you can create like an executive summary document for pulling reports from different tables and even different apps if you wanted to do that. So I think that's all I have to share on summaries. I'd open it up to questions. Feel free to raise your hand in the chat or drop a question in the chat. Unmute yourself.
When you take a summary report, like you were saying, if you were to start from scratch, I guess, in, you go into a template and you were to make a new subtable,
Right.
kind of how would you go about doing that process? I think that
Good
would be
question.
important to show.
Good question. So if I created an inventory summary report, I could just create a blanket inventory report. Let's just create. Number of inventories. What else do I want to summarize? Is it the only? Let's just do that one for now. And let's just group it by. We have. Yeah, let's group by manufacturer. Okay, so here's all my manufacturers, and here's a number of inventories or inventory records we have for each one. So if you wanted to just create a summary out of that, that's what that is, right? It's not tied to anything, it's just an inventory. Now, if I go to my document templates, notice I don't have a document template that points to my inventory. So I can't reuse one. So I'm just going to create a new one. And I'm just really going to create a new one so that I can connect it to my inventory table. I don't even have to choose anything other than what I really want to do is I want to connect it to my inventory table. So if I choose my inventory table, and I'm just going to choose a couple of fields. They really don't mean anything. So now at least I have a document template that's going to be used for inventory, but it doesn't really have to look like anything. I just want to create that subtable. That's the important thing now. So now when I come in here, I'm going to add a new subtable, and I'm going to call it the inventory summary. And I'm going to choose the inventory table again. There's not going to be any filter because we really don't need a filter, but I'm going to call this a summary. And I'm going to look, the reason why it's going to pull the summary reports from the inventory table is because I selected the inventory table here. So now when I come over to my filter, it's going to, I can choose that summary report that I just created. So now when I hit next, we should see the two columns there. And again, this is one thing, sometimes the API doesn't bring us back the proper type. So in this case, number of inventories, it brought it back as text. I'm going to change it to numeric. And you know what? I don't like that. I'm going to just say num. Let's do that. And I also want to summarize that guy. And manufacturer, it probably needs to be bigger. So let's just say that's 200. You know what? This one probably should be built bigger too. Let's just say it's at 75. And then I could do all the other formatting as well. But let's just, for simplicity, let's just say that's what it is. So I'm just going to save this and close. So now I have a new strid 31, right? So let's just drop that in our template. Let's just call this inventory. Tilde strid equals 31 tilde. Should make it look similar. Save this guy. Go back to our templates table. Let's open it up here. I'm still using that, let's say my global summary report. So if I come in here, because that's the template I changed, it's just drag and drop that on there. Whoops, I don't have to drag and drop.
You would if it was new forms.
Yeah, I know. I don't, that's why I don't use them. But so now I have a new template in there. So now when I go back to my reporting and I click create the document, there's the inventories. And now I can dress it up. I can, colorize it. I can maybe put the total label in there. If I wanted to add a filter, I could, but that's how you get a summary report from a table that you don't already have. It was a good question because sometimes you won't have a template that's already pointed at a specific table. So you don't, the one nice thing about our template table is it doesn't have to tie to a specific, like you see, I don't have a document in here. I pretty much just had to create a master template record so I can associate it to the table so that I can create a subtable configuration for it and then pull that into my document. Again, when we create documents, they don't have to potentially tie to anything. They could be just generic, and that's how that works.